Hello,
Hey there.
how are you? I am now
Um,
the host, but I think I've given you privileges to share your screen,
I
so
do see that icon on the
good.
screen, so
Yay. I'm uh, I'm just getting acclimated to a lot of the other Zoom settings I hadn't paid attention to.
mm.
I really like your wine room, CJ. It it does make me thirsty though, so do you like wine?
What was that?
Do you actually like wine?
Yeah, I do. Not
I
enough
would
to be
hope so.
trapped in a room all day, but
So you said on a previous call that you grew up in New York. Where in New York?
oh, I'm sorry, you were talking to me?
Yes.
What was that question?
I said you mentioned on a previous call that you grew up in New York. Where in
Yes,
New York?
Long Island, New York. You can't tell
East,
now?
North Shore or South Shore?
I grew up on the south shore of Wantagh, Long Island, Jones Beach, and then I went to school in Stony Brook and settled out there for a while. That's North
Okay.
Shore.
My
Right.
cousin went to Stony Brook. I lived in East Norwich for a little bit, but I'm a Queens
Yeah,
girl.
that's nice area. It's not far, that's actually not far from Stony Brook, if I'm not mistaken, right?
No, it's right there. So see, Jeff's like a West Coast person, so he's like, I don't know, I don't
Yep,
care.
I
yep.
spent 20 years in Silicon Valley, so that's sort of my home.
So hey Annika,
Hi,
how's the little one?
asleep.
Hey, is that why
She,
we're
she
whispering?
is loving it. She loves being home and getting all the attention. It's great for her.
Mm,
Yeah.
how's mom doing?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Adjusting my expectations. How about that?
I think we all are. Jess, how are you?
Hey everyone, I'm good. So yeah, same thing. Just adjusting, but doing well.
Good,
Thank you.
good. Yeah, you've moved recently, so
I did, yeah, but you know what? I'm healthy and I have a job. That's my perspective right now. So I don't want to get too ahead of myself.
no. And I know that you're fairly close to Katie and Annika now.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, Annika actually on her way home stopped by and we had a girls' lunch. Me, Annika, and Victoria. It was really fun.
Excellent.
Jess, where are you? Where are you?
I'm I'm in Danville, Virginia.
Ah,
Yeah, so I moved down here March 1st to start a new ecosystem development project, but we're going to pivot for a temporary COVID response strategy the next 90 days and then hopefully get back to it. But as long as I'm helping, that's just how I'm going to have to look at it right now. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of adjusting going on, so so we're definitely shifting. And I appreciate seeing all your lovely faces. And I guess we will. Jeff came up with a question, so I'm going to let him explain the popcorn question today, and some of the other things that we're going to do. I sent out the reminder a little bit early because things are happening. I'm just curious, is anybody on the call going to be part of Startup Weekend?
going what?
I'm not.
Startup Weekend.
They're doing a virtual startup weekend worldwide.
Yeah, so this one's in the States. There have been 60 countries so far that have taken part in Startup Weekend. And I think Germany had something like 40,000 people or something.
That's different. That's
That was a different one?
That was a hackathon that they put together. Shameless plug. They put together a hackathon in response to COVID. And we interviewed one of the organizers at my session for the Skull Foundation, which is now up on the Skull website. So,
Good,
yeah, really phenomenal work.
good. I'm glad to hear
Zero
that.
funding. They
Yeah.
did it within 5 days and not a single euro of funding. It was incredible.
Wow.
Really?
Largest hackathon in the world to date.
That's amazing. I know that that New Zealand, I sent my son information. I don't know if he'll take part. he's like, I don't know what I can contribute. And I was like, brain power. But because he's in New Zealand right now. And so I know a couple of us from Startup Champions are signed up for the hack. So I think Eric is helping to facilitate. So anyway, without further ado, we'll get started on storytelling. All these lovely storytellers here. Jeff, kick us off with your popcorn question.
All right, so I'm going to preface this with, this is a kind of oddball question. The theme, I came up with the theme for this agenda today over the weekend. Hit me about, it's basically around the idea of building shared vision in our community. So I'm going to paste it into the chat because it takes some explanation. But the popcorn question is, imagine that you, Captain Ecosystem Builder has saved the economy. I want you to fill in the blank. Captain Ecosystem Builder has saved the economy by defeating, insert your favorite ecosystem building challenge here, using his or her insert ecosystem building superpower. So I don't know if that makes sense. So I'll start it off. So Captain Ecosystem Builder saves the economy by overcoming, defeating ecosystem builders not collaborating, using his super collaboration lasso that lassos ecosystem builders and helps them to be able to see each other's strengths and thereby enabling them to work together. That's kind of the theme I'm going for here. So
I don't think you
anybody
followed
else?
your pattern. You're supposed to say by defeating something.
What's that?
So I'm not sure you followed your pattern, but
I know it's loose. Like I said, I just dreamt this up like a half an hour ago. So if anybody else kind of gets where I'm going with that and wants to go next.
So I'm going to jump in because I had a little bit more time than others to think about it. So so I'm stalling so other people can think because he sent the question to me. So my big pain point I keep coming up back to is ecosystem builders or gatekeepers. So for me, I would say Captain Ecosystem Builder saves the economy by defeating ecosystem builders using their power of resilience, because I think that's the only way you do it is to just wear them down and be resilient. So I will popcorn over to Annika. Looks like she's in deep thought.
Really what this is, it's coming up with a challenge the ecosystem builders face and a skill the ecosystem builders use. That's really the gist of it.
Yeah, and I don't think Meg can see it, so we'll have to type in the popcorn question again from Meg. Hi, Meg. So, Annika, how are you doing? Are you ready?
Yeah, I had a lot of ideas. I'm going to try it out while I'm saying it. Captain Ecosystem Builder saves the economy by defeating power disparities among actors, using his skill in his ability to redistribute value or make these players open up their capacities.
Good, I like it.
Just gonna leave that there. Who wants to go
I'm glad
next?
this is recording because I'm not trying to copy write these down. All right, Annika, you want to popcorn to somebody?
Sure.
Who looks
How
like
about,
they have an idea?
how about CJ, who really looks like he is in fact sitting in his bunker wine cellar? That's
lots
a
of creative
fantastic
inspiration in that
backdrop.
bunker. I
Yeah.
see.
You're
You're
muted,
on
buddy.
No audio, something.
Oh, you're muted again.
I can't. I honestly am drawing a blank.
All right, passes are allowed.
Pass to someone else.
Lots of people are passing on this one.
How about Jess? Since she's
She
not
just passed
even...
also in the
Oh,
chat.
she passed. Come on.
It's very creative. I appreciate their creativity, but my brain is mush from my Zoom calls this morning. So give me a second, but can I pass for now to Megan?
So I'm trying to find what it is that we're doing. Why don't we take this as an opportunity to refresh and reset And someone who didn't initially explain it explained to me what we're doing.
Okay.
And give me
I'll
kind of-
explain. I just pasted it into the chat as well. So really what I'm trying to come up here with is a challenge the ecosystem builders face and a superpower or a skill that ecosystem builders use. And it's just framed in a way, in a silly question. So Captain Ecosystem Builder saves the economy by defeating whatever challenge using whatever skill that you...
Captain Ecosystem Builder saves the economy by defeating
Whatever.
entrepreneurial... Yeah, I'm going for it.
Okay.
By defeating entrepreneurial support organizations' cultural incompetence
Awesome.
and lack of awareness around the barriers they're creating for entrepreneurs and potential aspiring small business owners, using her or his relationship building and community organizing superpowers.
Okay, I like it.
And that's a specific barrier that was unearthed through our research in Kansas City, and looking at neighborhoods in so our ESHIP communities, Kansas City work at Forward Cities is a neighborhood focused one. We have 4 different communities: ESHIP Baltimore, ESHIP Kansas City, Long Beach, and then Rio Grande, which is like north central New Mexico. And any of the communities that we're in, we do an involved research study. And so either small business owners or aspiring small business owners / entrepreneurs in 2 specific neighborhoods in Kansas City. One was historically African American. The other has been, in the last 30 years, a Latinx Hispanic neighborhood. And one of the barriers that they identified was the support organization's lack of cultural competence and awareness to serve and support their needs. So I'm seeing that on the ground with Gabe Munoz, and we actually in Startland News in Kansas City did a profile on Gabe. I mean, it was from I wrote it in partnership with Gabe. But it talks about his sort of history, and he's just an incredible relationship builder. So I'll drop a link to that story. And Jeff, I meant to flag that to you for Ecosystem Builder Hub stuff, but I'll share that now.
Awesome.
So yeah, so I was prepared without even realizing I was
great.
prepared.
Thank you. I think
Okay, so I'm gonna popcorn. Yeah, whoever's left.
I think Beth has the only one that hasn't passed, who hasn't gone, and she's gonna pass now too.
Yeah, tempting. Most of what I would have said has already been said, except I'll try to put a little twist on it. So Captain Ecosystem Builder saves the economy by defeating traditional economic development practices, using her innate ability to educate with humility.
Awesome. I like it.
Excellent. Okay. And Eric
I
just
haven't been
joined
yet.
us. Oh, yes. Go, Katie.
Okay. Captain Ecosystem Builder saves the economy by defeating territorialism, using her ability to share a compelling vision of success through interdependence.
I like it. People are catching on. Maybe we should also give people who pass an opportunity now they're getting the hang of it.
So Eric, we're going to put a little light on you. There's an interesting popcorn question that that Jeff has put. We will add it again to the chat so that you can see it, and give you a minute to think about it. So you have to fill in the blank. So get your Mad Libs hat on and figure out what Captain Ecosystem Builder uses to save the economy. No pressure.
Is he there? Eric, you there?
I don't see him anywhere.
Hello?
Hello, Eric, you there?
Hello? Hello?
There he is.
All right,
Yeah, so
gotcha now.
my screen, everybody froze, so I have no idea what's, and then I guess my system became unstable or something, so.
Have you got your chat box open?
I do, it's reopened now, but nothing from before.
Okay, so let's paste in that. We have a weird popcorn question today. It's all my fault.
You're going deep, huh?
Yeah. So it's the idea here is to pick a challenge that our superhero Captain Ecosystem Builder can overcome or defeat, and a skill or superpower that he or she uses to do that. So the popcorn question is: Captain Ecosystem Builder saves the economy by defeating or overcoming, insert your challenge there, with using his or her insert superpower.
Oh boy, I won't wordsmith because that'll take too long. Let's see, saves the economy by defeating people's sense of their own limitations by using her power to highlight the superpowers they've had all along.
Okay.
Nice.
Sounds like unsung heroes to me, Jeff.
Sounds like unsung heroes. So CJ and Jess, are you open to popping in, or we can move along?
Okay, that's all I got. I tried.
Okay.
So Captain EB saves the economy by defeating title-based, position-based decision-making using a talent-based, merit-based screening system.
I like it. All right.
Okay, cool.
CJ? No? Okay. Jeff, do you want to get us rolling on the subject?
Well, do we have any quick updates first, or do you want to just skip over to the...
We can update. So just a very brief update and a not defined, but I think most of you have heard parts of this. So as you know, the ESHIP Summit has been postponed, and we are getting ready to announce a date. It will be taking place. So you're getting this first. You cannot tweet it. But it will be taking place at the end of August, the very end of August. And we're working on design. So we're hoping that by end of August, we will be able to convene together safely and preparing for the possibility that we're not looking at virtual options or some kind of hybrid. So we're designing for all of that as we speak. Big design sessions. There is a call out to put together a delegation model, and I've kind of hinted at some of this before. So it's not very new. And Beth has written a wonderful story about Herman in Philadelphia, which Jeff will put on Ecosystem Builder Hub to share with you about how he kind of went about and did it anyway last year. Because as you all well know, you cannot build an ecosystem by yourself, no matter how good you are. So all the superpowers in the world will not get you an ecosystem. It will get you an ecosystem for sure. But while entrepreneurship is a community sport, ecosystem building is definitely a team sport. So we are inviting everyone to pick a team and create your own. And those players that may not show up normally, it may be a really good time to engage them, because while the ESHIP Summit is a point in time where we get together and we do epic stuff together, ecosystem building gets done the 360 plus other days of the year. So we want that to be able to, you to come together, work on something. And we'll be sending that same message out to the Mayor's Conference. So if you have local mayors and their ecosystem builders to kind of come together. So we'll be talking about that in the coming months, and so just so you know it, and the email should go out before the end of the week, so you'll get the official word. Then you can tweet it and share it with everybody. But
Well, Cecilia,
yes.
is there going to be the mayor's conference immediately prior to the ESHIP as before?
Yes. Yeah, and this year, I mean, normally the mayors come work on their thing, overlap with ESHIP, and then the ESHIP summit. I don't that we're working out some other things, but there's definitely an overlap and things that are coming about. So
I think that with all organizations everywhere being stretched because of COVID-19, people are pulling money out of all kinds of budgets to try to help small businesses and help their citizens. It's going to be a real challenge to find the money for something like this. So the sooner we can get this on the streets, the better. Maybe they'll have a chance at finding. I wanted to make sure that I got as many of our 12 mayors there as possible. And I know that each of our little towns is coming up with funds to help their small businesses. We're managing some of them for some of the smaller towns. So like I said, and most of them are going to close their fiscal year on June 30th. So we do have the opportunity to perhaps get into the budget for next year if we can get them thinking about it real soon. So I look forward to getting the email.
Yeah, and I see Beth's comment about the mayor's conference. The reason that it's the mayor's conference is I think for years the foundation has recognized that it's probably the highest level of local leadership, or the highest level of leadership you can get to and still have connectedness with that entity. So by the time you get to a state level, there's usually less engagement and less opportunity to impact boots on the ground. I don't know, Evan could probably talk to that a little bit better, but that's, and it's not limited to mayors, of course. It's a lot of economic development people in mayors' offices and things really happen. And yeah, to Eric's point, there's a lot of reasons. There's a lot of convenings for mayors. We're working with National League of Cities right now because they're part of the design for the mayor's conference as well. So
also just I'd like to add that when you look at the leadership structure in a town, you typically got a town manager who's like the business manager, who's worried about the expenses and the budget and all that. And you've got the mayor who's also worried about those things, but the mayor is more of a cultural focus. So the mayors are going to address the spirit of the town, and the town manager is going to focus on the back office. So, you know, if you want to change a culture in a town, the mayor is actually the place to start.
Yeah, I suppose that's true in most communities, but I cannot be alone in that our community has a county executive who is very connected across the 250,000 population of our MSA, and our mayor is very connected also, but only with the 100,000 people that are in the city proper. So I just hate to discourage.
There's no discouragement. It's totally, I mean, that's why you're inviting a delegation for the conference, for the ESHIP Summit, because while they're also their city officials are invited to the mayor's conference, and it's Evan's team that really works on who in that community gets the invitation that they send out, but it is open, and there's, like in the city of Tulsa, somebody from the mayor's economic development office comes, not the mayor. So So it's open to city officials, and that's something that Evan and his team can speak to more so. But as far as the ESHIP Summit, I mean, those are perfect people to be involved in the ESHIP Summit. That's your delegation, your educators, your policymakers, your like all those things. So anyway, I don't want to take up too much more of the time that's allotted for storytelling. I will. And then as far as the COVID response, if you haven't seen it yet, Start Us Up, or the America's New Business Plan policy team from the Kauffman Foundation has released their response to COVID as part of an addendum to America's New Business Plan. So I'll throw the link into the chat while Jeff goes along, and go ahead, Jeff.
Okay, first of all, I'm gonna say this is a big experiment. So, and, and this is a half-baked plan I've got. So bear with me. I'm gonna share my screen. Let's see, share. Can we see my screen? Yes, no? Okay,
Yes.
let me see if I can get to presentation mode. Where is that? There we go, present. All right, so this is the idea I had this last weekend. It's kind of, since this is a storytelling call, it's kind of, the idea is future storytelling and building a shared vision. Or it's inspired by a lot of people, Cecilia, one of them, in an article recently, talked about this current crisis as an opportunity to recreate, redesign new systems and a new normal. So if we have the ability and the opportunity to do that, what would we create? What would that new normal be that we have a chance to co-design? And it's kind of inspired by some system thinker like Peter Senge, who said a shared vision involves the skills of unearthing shared pictures of the future that foster genuine commitment and enrollment rather than compliance. Oops. And I'm not able to go to the next slide. There we go. So Cecilia asked in her article, what kind of world will you help design? Now is the time to decide what we value, who we are, and where we want to go. Forget the past. We need to build for what's next. So piggybacking off of that, I thought it'd be an interesting opportunity to, wow, this keeps advancing too fast, to encourage our groups, not just this call, but others, to speculate about a future together that increases the likelihood that we can work together to achieve a desirable future. So think about what we as ecosystem builders can do to co-create and co-design a better system for the future. There's actually lots of tools out there to help us do that. Mostly are kind of fit on the umbrella of what's called futures thinking, which you can read there. They're basically methods to kind of reflect forward and into different areas of our lives and come up with scenarios to design a better future. And like I said, a caveat, this is all pretty new to me. I've never done this before, so I don't know what the hell I'm doing. But I think it'd be impactful if we in storytelling and other ESHIP calls could kind of co-design a way to surface these future scenarios. So I sent a link out in the email and I've pasted it in the agenda. There's a document called the Equitable Futures Toolkit. And if you scroll down within that to I think page 17, they've actually developed a card game that helps groups of people identify futures. And we kind of did a little pre-exercise with that with this popcorn question that I did. Actually, I'm going to stop this. So the concept is, in this card game, is that they have people deal out these cards. There's challenge cards, there's values cards, there's skill cards, and there's persona cards. And if you look at page, I think 22 in that, you deal those out, and then you have people fill out using the cards they get. They complete this sentence. by whatever year, we'll have a more sustainable and equitable economies by overcoming whatever challenge. Ecosystems will be organized around pickup value, and using a tool will be a commonplace tool to use to combat or control that challenge. So, am I still? Yeah, okay. First of all, before I go further, have I totally confused everybody? Is there anybody that I have not confused?
No, actually, we use that. Value Web uses that in some of their design. So we use that thinking about the ESHIP Summit. So when we start convening for the ESHIP Summit, that's one of the things that we do is talk about it's a month after the summit and where have we gotten to. So you're right there. Lots of people thinking.
I think the easiest way to simplify this might be, so this toolkit I sent out has, you see here on the screen, page 17 or 19 has these challenge cards. And they're kind of generic big world problems like political corruption, hunger, poverty, health disparities. So my idea is to create an ecosystem builder centric version of these cards. And I thought we could do that in this call here. And then what we could do with that in the future is maybe use those cards to go through the actual exercise in a card game. So I think what I'd like to do is say, what are some, start with, let's identify some challenges that the ecosystem builders face and the entrepreneurs face, and start collecting those, and those would be the challenge cards. And then once we get everybody's thoughts on that, we can move on to the value cards. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that's...
Okay.
Yes.
So let's do this. So let's just, can I ask somebody to scribe and just capture people's challenges? And I know several of you already mentioned challenges in that popcorn game. So those of you who did, in fact, I'll start off and say the challenges of different ecosystem building groups or ESOs not collaborating in an ecosystem is a challenge.
Yeah, I mean, I would even say some of the existing cards, there's plenty of those apply because they have such a dramatic impact on the way our communities are organized in general. And I think part of what we're seeing, of course, with COVID-19 is it's just like amplifying the existing challenges around like a white supremacist racist culture, around wealth inequity, like all of those things. And people, entrepreneurs and small business owners are even more vulnerable in categories connected to all that. So I would say that some of those cards are going to be relevant.
Okay. I'm just going to say in addition.
Yeah, Annika, you mentioned something as well about, so what was the challenge that you unearthed?
Well, I was thinking especially in terms of the PPP and some of the big chains snatching up funding that was meant for small businesses. And just in terms of we're all trying to do the same, I like to think if we had the shared vision and sort of just redistributing some of those resources, redistributing what they have access to, making their supply chains available. So just, I think, bringing the big players together with the smaller players, and I think that applies across the topic of ecosystem building. It's just these, I've been thinking about these design principles and connecting top down and bottom up. So the CEO leaders with the grassroots organizers and really coming together and rallying. I don't know how to phrase that as a challenge. I guess power disparity comes to mind, but it's really a subscribed disparity rather than a real, well, it is a real one too.
No, it is a real one. I think, and then Jess kind of touched on that too. So one of the things that I said in the medium piece that I wrote was that the system, and if you've been on calls with me before, you've heard me say this over and over again, the system isn't broken. The system works very well for the people who the system was built for. What you're seeing now is the cracks in the system, and you're seeing who the system isn't working for. So that's a lot of the challenge that goes on. Hello, Victoria. So I think that the idea of what, and that's where the designing the new normal came in. So so the systems, and I've heard Katie speak about this too. Just when she wrote her her comment in. Hi, Christine. Welcome to our call. I think, if you can see the agenda, Jeff has shared a game that he's helping to populate. So, so Katie and Jess, do you want to talk about some of the things that you raised as well?
And maybe just rephrase the challenges that you guys used so I can capture those. Start there.
Katie, go ahead.
Okay, I think the thing that I mentioned was territorialism. You talk about in our pop, yeah, territorialism. You know, I think that one of our challenges is that people have been working for a long time to build up their fiefdoms, and there is a reluctance to let go of that territory, and I think there's an inherent fear of somebody else getting credit for work that they've done, just because of the way that our system has handed out rewards in the past.
Okay, good.
Sure, I can piggyback off that. So my comment about, decisions being made by strictly title or position, but maybe not so much merit or talent regarding entrepreneurship ecosystem building. So I guess for the cards, while I don't necessarily fully agree that, so I know like the Techstars mantra is startup communities need to be fully entrepreneur-led. I don't know if I fully agree like every community can do that if they don't have the density, but I do agree entrepreneurs need to be way more involved and way more heard. For example, the project I'm on right now, I'm the coordinator for all the resource providers, but my big thing that I keep vocalizing is it can't just be all the resource providers in the room talking about what we need to do. There needs to be entrepreneurs at the table to say what their struggles are on a day-to-day basis. So I would say that would be one, to make sure that entrepreneurs are really included in the high-level decision-making at the table and not just high-level folks. I don't know how to word that nicer, but that's one thing.
Cool.
I don't think you have to word it nicely, Jess. I think we've heard others say the same thing, right? So, so that's the inclusion piece as well. I know that. So CJ, I know that you've written books around the entrepreneurship education stuff. So what is it that you think is a challenge that keeps reoccurring?
Well, I can't speak for other ecosystems. I'm just curious. I'm getting an incredible delay here. Are my words matching my lips with everybody right now? Sort of. Okay. So I can only speak for our very large ecosystem here in Phoenix, and I've noticed an interesting dynamic over the past 10 years. Is that we focus very hard on inclusion, but two things have happened over the past 10 or 11 years of deliberate grassroots ecosystem building. Is that we really did focus on inclusion, but two things have happened. On one extreme level, it seems to have settled in on a few entities and organizations sort of taking over. And I don't know of a way to prevent that, but that's what's happened. A couple of universities, a couple of organizations, and a lot of times it tends to be the usual suspects. They try very hard to be inclusive. I don't know how to best describe this, but it ends up sometimes becoming exclusive if you're not part of those organizations. The other issue is we've tried to embrace inclusion and be encouraging to everybody to the point where I've been very vocal that it sometimes has affected the quality of outcomes. And it doesn't mean inclusion at the is the enemy of quality, but what I wrote an article that didn't make me a lot of friends called T-ball entrepreneurship, which means, you know, if everybody gets a trophy, if everybody is encouraged, then there's no way to know if you're encouraging everybody. And when I say encouraging, celebrating everybody and everything, then it doesn't allow others to be distinguished because it may be unfair to others. So those are the two things that I found is, you know, in an effort to be nice and include everybody, it ends up sometimes being exclusionary. And also we've done that at the expense of quality ventures, quality and economic development. I hope some of that made sense.
Is that last one basically just saying sometimes quality suffers when you try to be, you're seeing issues of quality suffering when you try to be inclusive? Is that what you're saying?
No, well, I didn't mean to match inclusivity with quality. What I meant to say is that when you're trying to be encouraging and be a very nurturing ecosystem, you end up celebrating. You don't want to point out bad ideas or ventures or entrepreneurs that may be on a path to failure. All right, because it might seem discouraging. You don't want to be discouraging. And in that effort of not wanting to be discouraging, you end up kind of encouraging mediocrity. And that's just not a sweeping comment. Over the past 10 or 11 years, that's actually what's happened. You know, is that there are entrepreneurs and ventures that should have gotten some tough love, but no institution and no individuals wanted to be the one to say it. And in addition, there's a lot of celebration, whether it's, you know, student ventures, et cetera, where, you know, nobody wants to be the one to say, go back to the drawing board. But I'm not, it's built in. That's what I mean. That celebration, that encouragement is built in. And that ends up prolonging a lot of ventures and efforts that don't help the ecosystem. And it also alienates a lot of the ventures and the more experienced folks because they don't want to be the one to say it. Even mentors are sometimes afraid to mentor correctly because they don't want to seem like the one to be discouraging. So in an effort to be encouraging to everyone, it ends up affecting the quality of the ecosystem.
Yeah, I like the lack of tough love. That kind of, to me, sums it up pretty well.
So those are the two problems, is that it seemed to have settled in on a few organizations or institutions, and that in itself ends up sometimes, and that's a longer set of reasons why it's exclusionary, whether it's distance, whether it's an organization or a workspace that only caters to 23-year-olds and under, so therefore you're excluding you know, older entrepreneurs, and that ends up settling in that way after 10 years. And I'd love to find a way to prevent that.
I think Katie and Jess are kind of spot on some of this. A lot of it has to do with trust, and a lot of it has to do with the way that it's approached. Culture, right? People plus culture equals everything. So we've not set up the culture right. So Katie, share a little bit about that.
So I think there is no one answer. So we have different pillars. I don't want to call it pillars, it seems like, but we have different segments of entrepreneurship. And the expectations for an entrepreneur in a tech startup or a biopharma startup is very different for an entrepreneur that's a lifestyle business. The expectations for an entrepreneur coming out of one of our top universities with lots of resources behind them is very different from what we would expect from an entrepreneur in a low income, low resource neighborhood with almost no resources. So how tough love looks is different in each one of those situations. And one of the things that we were worried about with the Launch Raleigh program was we were opening something up in a traditionally low resource community. And we were worried that we were going to bring in mentors from the affluent part of the community to come in, as they always do, fly into the poor folks' neighborhood so we can save them, and come in with a bunch of cultural ignorance and assumptions and a desire to pat themselves on the back. And when things don't work out perfectly, say, oh, well, they were ungrateful, well, they didn't understand, or they weren't ready. So I think we have to be careful that that we're matching the right mentor with the right perspective to the right situation to provide that mentoring, and understand that tough love is not the same across the board. And also success may not be the same. So helping somebody with a venture that's going to bring in an additional $500 a month for their family, which is $6,000 a year, which can totally change the lifestyle of a family who's living on the margins, is a success. But if you've got somebody who's from a family that's already bringing in $250,000, well, that's not success for them. So I think all of this, the key thing is it's not one size fits all. We have to make sure that we're keeping in mind, you know, who that target audience is and what the culture is that we're impacting. Also, like going to our Hispanic businesses here, a lot of them are cash basis for lots of different reasons: cultural, social, and when we say to some entrepreneurs, well, you got to have a business bank account, well, that may not work for some of our Hispanic entrepreneurs who are so worried about their documentation status and their ability to very quickly get money home. So it's just that I think sometimes we forget the nuance in all of this. And that's all I got to say about that.
Thank you.
Right. I think that the relationship is paramount. When we talk about this, so I think that that's where the cultural competency, the information and things. So I don't know how much of that you captured in the thing, Jeff. What other things? So we could talk about inclusion and points of view all day long, the perspectives, and that's why we bake all of that diversity and inclusion into the discussions that we have. What other pain points or challenges do you see that in telling this story? I think that's why we tell stories, right? To uncover some of those things. The whole deal with the unsung heroes. What were you seeking?
Well, to highlight those that are behind the scenes really making things happen, that aren't in those high-powered positions or don't get the coverage that they deserve, really. You know, I think it's more like a appreciation highlight.
And also remind ecosystem builders themselves what value they're bringing. I think there's a lot of martyrdom and little acknowledgement for themselves, how much they're actually doing. So I think one of the biggest values we got was when someone was nominated, the reason for that nomination. So for them to hear what someone from their community said about them was really valuable. So awareness raising widely and for the ecosystem builder, him or herself.
So what you're, if I can kind of confirm that, it's the affirmation, the validation that you're not seeing. I mean, that's the reason to uncover unsung heroes, right? Because for some reason, something is not happening that should be happening, which is the recognition, affirmation, validation of the stuff that they do. Does that sound right? So if I type that in?
Yeah, I think in a lot of ways, you know, we keep talking about community first, and I think it's by nature that ecosystem builders don't brag, right? It's usually people that, it's kind of like moms, you know, when people say moms don't get credit to have 2 full-time jobs raising kids at home. Ecosystem builders are kind of like that, where they take on a lot, they do a lot, but it doesn't really get thanked, you know, just like stay-at-home mom or dads do a lot of work, I guess. That's how I see it.
Yeah, when I was at home with my son, I know that I talked about I was at home working, so that was my work. That's not like I'm not working. I'm doing work. It's just different work. Jeff, so besides challenges, is there another topic that you want
Well,
to
there are, and I
tackle?
think in the interest of time, and I probably should have just reformatted this whole thing differently and just asked people for their challenges rather than miring it in the card game idea. But I think Eric and Beth both had challenges that they mentioned. Are you guys both still on the call? I think it looks like Eric may have dropped off. Beth, what was the challenge that you mentioned when we were doing that popcorn?
Well, that challenge was traditional practitioners in the economic development community are very challenged to step away from their activities that they've been performing forever that aren't working, and making data-driven decisions on how and where and when to act. And it goes back to, you know, the question about the trust culture that Jess posted up there. It's like, I'm leaning towards, just based on my firsthand experience, human nature it's going to take a very long time to get human nature to think more broadly and to really come and build that trust. Until we have clear, data-driven accountabilities established for what needs to happen in ecosystem building for entrepreneurs, for each community, and they're transparent and everybody knows who's performing what tasks and how they're doing and how they're adjusting if they're not succeeding. Until we have that information, I think most or a lot are going to continue to not be responsible, even though the data show that we're failing as an economic development ecosystem in our communities.
Cool, thanks. I think we've got that. So maybe in 5 minutes, let's switch it up and just say, what to you, to each person, are the values of ecosystem builders? What values do what values do you value, basically, in ecosystem building? I'm going to, and I will start off. I'll say one of the values that I really value of ecosystem builders is really exemplified by, say, Rick Tarosian in Portland, and that is being a connector, using the value of his relationships to make the connections in his community that are needed.
So thinking about Rick Tarosian, I also think humble is something that I associate with somebody like Rick. So he doesn't feel like he would never be accused of being an ecosystem builder.
Mm-hmm. Okay. What other values?
Have founders front and center, as always, I think. So not the latest, but the Brett Feld episode on the Keystone podcast, for those who haven't heard it yet, he talks about sort of leadership. It's something I've been struggling with, thinking of ecosystem builders in a leadership capacity without being leaders of the ecosystem, yada, yada, yada. So I think just a constant reminder to ourselves that whatever it is we do, we put on the needs of entrepreneurs front and center, especially in a time like this. And knowing that those will look different for the type of founders, to Katie's point earlier, the location we're in, so on and so forth.
Okay, good. Putting the needs of founders front and center. What else?
I think perseverance and grit are both really key as well. It's not for the faint of heart.
Good. Got it.
Ecosystem building, it's not for sissies.
What's that?
I think that's a new shirt, right? Ecosystem building is not for sissies.
Oh, so it looks like somebody.
What some of the other things? Just what was when you were talking about the is it the talent based to merit based? So share that.
Yeah, I think it goes back to inclusion. You know, a lot of business and a lot of stuff that's been done structurally in a hierarchy for decades. That works in the military, and that works for manufacturing. That might work for some industries, but for ecosystem building, it has to be not so much a hierarchical decision-making system, but really making sure that people that are talent-based or merit-based, or there's startups in a community that have a natural, you know, people have them as natural leaders or follow them, are at the table, and actually their input matters just as much as the established organizations or established folks in the community. So I think, yeah, being intentional about making sure talent-based and merit-based folks are at the table.
Okay. Anybody else?
Megan, think about the things that you folks do at Forward Cities. I think the going back to the inclusion thing, but there's other things that you do in Forward Cities that tries to bring about different outcomes.
Yeah, I mean, I was just taking a step back because I felt like I was very vocal earlier. So I was trying to do that. Like you share a couple comments and then you like step to the back of the room so that you can let other folks share. But in terms of values, I mean, I think people have covered a lot. Is there something specific you're thinking of, or are you just using that as a prompt to invite me into the conversation?
Yes.
Yes to both. Okay. So yeah, I mean, I think that relationship building is so key. We've covered that. I think we've covered the equity and inclusion piece. I think you know, when you look at ESHIP goals and design principles, thinking about how to connect people from the top down, the bottom, all around. I also like the phrase fierce compassion comes to mind. So we can show up from a place of compassion, but that fierceness is also kind of that ability to bring the truth speaking into the room and into the space. So I think we can do that simultaneously. Also, just in terms of values, I'm a huge fan of clear communication and creating spaces where people can speak honestly and the truth speaking is understood, and there's like a culture of that. And working in Baltimore, like there's such a culture of truth speaking in Baltimore that has just been so refreshing and dynamic to be engaged in those community conversations. And so I think, I think all of that is tied in.
That's great. Thank you, Megan. I think that's a lot of what CJ was talking about. And that's the difference between being kind and being nice, right? Because you could be nice, but you're not being kind really when you don't, it's, for entrepreneurs, your brainchild, your ideas, your baby, and to tell people that their baby's ugly is not very nice, but sometimes, you know, that's a kindness thing. So CJ and Christine, I want to give you both a chance to say something before we wrap, but.
I think you've covered all the main aspects of it. There was one observation about at least our ecosystem and a couple of others that I've been involved with. which was as the as the economic development entities start to become more involved, particularly with resources, it changes the dynamic, and often not in a good way. So if, again, Phoenix is a huge ecosystem of ecosystems, and so we have several cities that have devoted or created economic development entities with funding, and then we have one for the state as well, and several others. And what ends up happening is they appoint people to allocate those resources, organize. The problem is that they don't have any of this type of exposure to entrepreneurship or to the entrepreneurial communities, and they end up engaging with suboptimal resources out there. In other words, you know, they'll engage lawyers to be on judging committees, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know how, and I don't mean to disparage lawyers, if anybody there is one, but what it means is that you have economic development professionals who have no experience in organizing entrepreneurship, in charge of resources, and this is a victim of success here. So they will try to be encouraging, inclusive, and create programs, but out of the gate, they tend to be suboptimal programs because they're run by people that have, you know, a month's experience with entrepreneurial ecosystem building. So the result of some of these activities that we're doing here, hopefully will result in some best practices that these economic development or new economic developers who are focusing on entrepreneurship can follow, rather than what seems logical or what feels good. That was a long-winded point, but I hope I made it.
Okay, and I want to be mindful of everyone's time, but I also want to let Christine share some insights that she might have garnered from this.
Yeah, no, this is great. Thanks for letting me tune in towards the latter half. And CJ, Jesse resonates with your note for sure. So it was definitely well received. And I put my kind of thought in the chat that Jeff captured around whole systems and wholehearted. I feel like ecosystem builders are really incredible about being able to see how everything's connected. And a lot of the values that y'all shared are really great. I really love fierce compassion. So yeah, so nothing much to add, and want to be mindful of time too. So
great. So Jeff, that looks like the beginning of a game. So some of the cards, and I think that's an interesting way to put something forward. So what would you like to do next about it?
I don't know. I guess think about it. So I thinking about it now. I probably tried to bite off more than we could chew in this small time. She could just start with challenges and values, but I think the next step will maybe go through, review this, document some more, and look at the tool cards that are in there, and the persona cards. And I'm going to look at seeing if I can create an ecosystem builder centric focused version of this game that might be used in somehow by ecosystem builders. I think it could be done at a field wide level, and I think it could be done at a local level too. So I'm going to play around with this idea some more. But with that, I will turn it over to you to finish us out.
Okay, well, thank you again. And in the chat, I shared the PDF for the Kauffman Foundation's response to COVID. And so that's in the chat. It's also on the Start Us Up Now page. So feel free to share it with people as we move forward. And I think the next call for the goals is going to be Goal 7. I know the Goal 7 team, Sustainable Work, is working on their agenda item. It's a lot of you are all working very hard to support your local ecosystems and entrepreneurs and small businesses, and trying to balance that energy. So we really appreciate the time and the energy that you share here to move the field forward while we're doing this. So if you have any questions or anything else we can help with, look for the update about the ESHIP Summit. Think about the people that you want on your team as we create delegations. And we'll say, well, everybody wave goodbye to Victoria. And
Hi,
we'll
Victoria.
and
What a
we'll see
nugget.
you all soon.
Such a serious baby.
Oh, because she was adorable earlier, making faces.
I know. She was just playing around.
So
All right, we'll
cute.
see you real soon. Thank you so much. And please continue the conversation in the Slack channel. And if you're open for a community hour, we'll take a break next on Thursday.
That's where the
Online.
game could be played, is during a virtual happy hour.
Oh,
There you go.
fun.
All
That'd be
right.
awesome.
See? You
Good to
bring
see
that.
you
You
all.
bring your party games to the happy hour.
Oh,
I'll talk to
Victoria.
you soon.
Bye all.
Goodbye.
Bye, y'all. Have a good week.